The fluorescent lights hummed with their usual mechanical persistence in the windowless basement of Building 47 at Fort Harrison's Intelligence Training Center. Rain drummed against the ground-level windows that lined the upper portion of the walls, creating a rhythmic backdrop to the tension that filled the cramped classroom. 32 of the military's brightest analytical minds sat hunched over their workstations, fingers flying across keyboards as they attempted to decode what their instructor had ominously dubbed the Prometheus Cipher. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Sarah Chen sat in the back corner of the room, her oversized military-issued glasses perpetually sliding down her nose as she squinted at the monitor, displaying lines of seemingly random alphanumeric sequences. Her uniform, while regulation, appeared to hang loosely on her small frame, and her mouse movements were hesitant, almost timid compared to the confident clicking echoing from her classmates' workstations. The other students had quickly learned to avoid partnering with her during group exercises, having witnessed her stumble through basic pattern recognition drills that others completed in minutes. Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez, the lead instructor for Advanced Cryptanalysis, prowled between the rows of desks like a predator surveying his territory. His combat boots struck the linoleum with deliberate precision, each step designed to remind the students that behind his analytical expertise lay years of field experience where mistakes meant more than poor grades. Rodriguez had earned his reputation by breaking enemy communications networks in 3 different theaters of operation, and his classroom reflected that no-nonsense approach to intelligence work. The Prometheus Cipher had been developed by the National Security Agency's most elite cryptographers as the ultimate test for military intelligence officers. For the past 6 years, it had been used as the capstone challenge at Fort Harrison, separating future intelligence analysts from those destined for reassignment to less critical roles. The cipher incorporated elements of classical cryptography, modern encryption protocols, linguistic analysis, and mathematical sequences that required intuitive leaps beyond pure computational power. Rodriguez paused behind Sarah's workstation, noting the confusion evident in her furrowed brow and the way she kept adjusting her glasses with nervous frequency. Her screen displayed the same jumbled characters that had appeared 2 hours earlier when the challenge began, with minimal progress evident in her working notes. The instructor's expression remained neutral, but internally he wondered how someone with Sarah's apparent limitations had even qualified for the advanced program. Marcus Thompson, seated 3 rows ahead of Sarah, embodied everything the military intelligence community valued in its future officers. The former West Point honor graduate possessed an eidetic memory, spoke 4 languages fluently, and had already distinguished himself during the first 8 weeks of the program by consistently achieving the highest scores in every assessment. His uniform was immaculate, his posture perfect, and his confidence infectious among his fellow students who had begun to look to him as their unofficial leader. Thompson's fingers moved across his keyboard with mechanical precision as he worked through his 4th different decryption approach. His monitor displayed complex mathematical formulas, frequency analyses, and linguistic pattern charts that demonstrated a systematic methodology that impressed even Rodriguez. Several students had begun stealing glances at Thompson's screen, hoping to catch insights that might help their own struggling efforts. Jessica Martinez, another top performer in the class, had established herself as Thompson's primary competition. Through her innovative approaches to intelligence problems, Martinez possessed an intuitive understanding of human psychology that allowed her to anticipate the thinking patterns of cipher creators, giving her unique advantages in breaking codes that relied on psychological misdirection. Her background in behavioral analysis had already caught the attention of several federal agencies interested in recruiting her upon graduation. The classroom atmosphere grew increasingly tense as the afternoon wore on without any student achieving a breakthrough. Rodriguez had warned them that the average completion time for the Prometheus Cipher ranged from 6 to 8 hours for the most capable analysts, with many never solving it at all. The pressure was intensified by the knowledge that their performance on this challenge would largely determine their final rankings and subsequent assignments within the intelligence community. Sarah continued to struggle with what appeared to be elementary aspects of the cipher, her notes reflecting a scattered approach that jumped between different methodologies without apparent logic. She had filled several pages with calculations that seemed to lead nowhere, crossed out more work than she had kept, and appeared to be fighting back tears of frustration as the hours passed. Her classmates had long since stopped looking in her direction, focusing instead on their own challenges while secretly grateful that they weren't performing as poorly as the quiet woman in the corner. The cipher itself consisted of seemingly random strings of letters, numbers, and symbols arranged in blocks of varying lengths. Initial analysis revealed no obvious patterns in frequency distribution, no clear linguistic markers, and no mathematical relationships that yielded to standard cryptographic approaches. The NSA designers had incorporated multiple layers of obfuscation, including false patterns designed to mislead analysts down unproductive paths. Rodriguez announced that students could take a brief meal break, but most chose to remain at their workstations, unwilling to lose momentum or admit defeat by stepping away from the challenge. The instructor used the time to walk among the students, offering subtle hints to those whose approaches showed promise while maintaining the strict protocol that prohibited direct assistance. His military bearing never wavered, but those who knew him well could detect the slight tension in his shoulders that suggested even he harbored concerns about whether any of his students would successfully break the cipher. Thompson had begun collaborating quietly with Martinez and 2 other top students, their combined expertise creating a formidable analytical team that attacked the problem from multiple angles simultaneously. Their whispered discussions centered on advanced mathematical concepts and cutting-edge cryptographic theories that demonstrated the sophisticated level of their thinking. Other students began gravitating toward their area of the room, hoping to contribute to or benefit from their collaborative effort. The social dynamics of the classroom had crystallized around perceived competence, with natural hierarchies emerging based on demonstrated analytical capabilities. Sarah found herself increasingly isolated, not through any overt hostility from her classmates, but through the simple reality that her apparent struggles made her an undesirable partner for students whose careers depended on successful completion of the program. She had grown accustomed to eating lunch alone, studying in empty corners of the library, and facing training exercises as an individual when others formed teams. As evening approached, the classroom lights seemed harsher against the darkening windows, creating a bunker-like atmosphere that emphasized the isolation of the underground facility. The building's heating system created sporadic background noise that some students found distracting, but Sarah appeared oblivious to external stimuli as she continued her methodical examination of the cipher. Her approach had become even more erratic, with frequent starts and stops that suggested growing desperation rather than systematic progress. Rodriguez had seen this pattern many times before in struggling students who reached the limits of their analytical capabilities when confronted with challenges that exceeded their preparation or natural abilities. The instructor maintained professional compassion for students like Sarah, but the military's needs demanded objective assessment of capabilities rather than emotional consideration of effort. Intelligence work required not just dedication, but cognitive abilities that could not be developed through pure determination. The collaborative group led by Thompson had made significant progress in identifying several structural elements within the cipher, including what appeared to be nested encoding schemes and possible linguistic elements hidden within the mathematical sequences. Their excitement was palpable as they discovered patterns that had eluded them for hours, and their confident discussions began attracting the attention of Rodriguez, who observed their work with growing approval. Martinez had contributed a crucial insight about psychological profiling of the cipher's creators, suggesting that the NSA designers had incorporated deliberate misdirections based on common analytical assumptions. Her behavioral analysis background allowed her to anticipate the mental traps that might ensnare traditional cryptographic approaches, giving the group valuable guidance about which promising leads might actually be designed to waste time and resources. The atmosphere in the classroom had evolved into something resembling a high-stakes competition, with students monitoring each other's progress through peripheral vision while maintaining focus on their own challenges. Subtle signs of stress appeared in increased caffeine consumption, more frequent trips to the restroom, and the unconscious habits that emerged when people worked under pressure for extended periods. Sarah's isolation became more pronounced as her classmates' collaborative efforts produced visible results that contrasted sharply with her apparent lack of progress. Her workspace had become cluttered with discarded approaches and false starts, creating a physical manifestation of her analytical struggles that made her difficulties impossible to ignore. Several students had begun shooting sympathetic glances in her direction, the kind of looks typically reserved for individuals facing inevitable failure. The institutional pressure of the military intelligence program created an environment where academic success translated directly into career opportunities and professional respect. Students understood that their performance during training would follow them throughout their military careers, influencing assignments, promotions, and access to classified programs that represented the pinnacle of intelligence work. The stakes extended far beyond academic grades to encompass lifelong professional trajectories. Rodriguez had begun preparing his assessment notes for the day's exercise, documenting which students had demonstrated analytical promise and which might require additional remedial training or possible reassignment. His military experience had taught him to maintain objectivity in personnel evaluations, focusing on demonstrated capabilities rather than personal sympathy for struggling individuals. The intelligence community's mission requirements left little room for sentiment when assessing analytical potential. The collaborative group's breakthrough came suddenly, with Thompson identifying a key mathematical relationship that unlocked a significant portion of the cipher's structure. Their excited whispers drew the attention of the entire classroom as they began rapidly entering solutions that produced coherent text fragments from the previously meaningless character strings. Rodriguez approached their workstation with professional interest, his expression revealing cautious optimism about their progress. Martinez built upon Thompson's discovery by recognizing linguistic patterns within the decoded sections that suggested multiple languages were incorporated into the cipher's design. Her psychological insights proved valuable in anticipating the cipher creator's methodology, allowing the group to avoid time-consuming false leads while focusing their efforts on productive analytical approaches. Their collaboration had become a masterclass in applied intelligence analysis that impressed even their demanding instructor. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Other students began abandoning their individual efforts to observe the successful group's methodology, hoping to understand the breakthrough insights that had eluded them despite hours of concentrated effort. The classroom dynamics shifted dramatically as the clear emergence of successful analysts created a new social hierarchy based on demonstrated problem-solving capabilities rather than previous academic achievements or military ranks. Sarah remained focused on her individual workstation, apparently oblivious to the excitement surrounding Thompson's group as they continued making rapid progress toward complete decryption. Her isolation had become so complete that she seemed to exist in a separate reality from her celebrating classmates, maintaining her methodical examination of character patterns with the same quiet persistence she had demonstrated throughout the day. The Prometheus Cipher's complexity became fully apparent as the successful group began explaining their solution methodology to Rodriguez, revealing the multiple layers of encoding that had created such formidable challenges for individual analysts. The NSA designers had anticipated collaborative approaches by incorporating elements that specifically required diverse analytical perspectives, making the cipher nearly impossible for any single individual to solve regardless of their capabilities. As the evening hours passed, the classroom atmosphere settled into a routine of continued work, punctuated by periodic celebrations from the successful group as they unlocked additional sections of the cipher. Their progress had become steady and systematic, with each breakthrough building upon previous discoveries to create momentum that carried them toward complete solution. Rodriguez's approval was evident in his increasingly frequent visits to their workstation and his detailed notes about their collaborative methodology. The other students had largely accepted their inability to match the successful group's progress, with many beginning to pack up their materials in acknowledgement that the day's challenge had exceeded their current analytical capabilities. The institutional culture of the intelligence program encouraged recognition of limitations as much as celebration of successes, understanding that accurate self-assessment was crucial for effective intelligence work. Sarah's persistence had become almost mechanical, her continued focus on the cipher appearing to stem from stubborn determination rather than any realistic expectation of success. Her workstation remained cluttered with unsuccessful attempts, creating a stark visual contrast with the organized efficiency demonstrated by the successful collaborators. Several classmates had begun regarding her continued efforts with mixtures of admiration for her persistence and concern for her apparent inability to recognize when a challenge had exceeded her capabilities. Rodriguez announced that students could remain in the classroom for additional work time, but cautioned that the facility would close at midnight regardless of their progress. The instructor's professional demeanor remained consistent, but students who had worked with him previously recognized subtle signs that he was pleased with the day's overall results, despite the limited number of successful solutions. The successful group had begun documenting their solution methodology for Rodriguez's review, creating detailed explanations of their breakthrough insights and collaborative processes. Their work represented exactly the kind of analytical thinking that the intelligence community sought to develop through the advanced training program, demonstrating both technical expertise and the interpersonal skills necessary for effective team-based intelligence operations. Thompson's leadership throughout the collaborative effort had solidified his reputation as the program's most promising analyst, with his systematic approach and mathematical insights providing the foundation for the group's success. His confidence had grown throughout the day as each breakthrough validated his analytical methodology and reinforced his position as the informal leader among his peers. Martinez's contributions to the group's success highlighted the value of interdisciplinary approaches to intelligence problems, with her psychological insights proving as crucial as Thompson's mathematical expertise. Her ability to anticipate the cipher creator's thinking had prevented the group from pursuing numerous false leads that had trapped other students throughout the day. The classroom had grown quiet except for the continued clicking of Sarah's keyboard and the low conversations of the successful group as they finalized their solution documentation. The contrast between the celebration surrounding the solved cipher and Sarah's isolated struggles created a poignant illustration of the program's competitive nature and its emphasis on demonstrated analytical capabilities. Rodriguez had begun his preliminary assessment of the day's results, noting which students had shown promise, which had collaborated effectively, and which might require additional support or possible program reassignment. His military training emphasized objective evaluation based on performance rather than potential, creating standardized metrics that would influence each student's future opportunities within the intelligence community. As the evening progressed toward the facility's closing time, most students had accepted the day's outcomes and begun preparing to leave. The successful group continued their documentation work while discussing the insights they had gained about advanced cryptographic analysis. Their excitement about their achievement was tempered by professional awareness of the classified nature of their work and the security protocols that govern discussion of intelligence methodologies. Sarah remained at her workstation with the same quiet focus she had maintained throughout the day, her continued efforts appearing almost ritualistic in their persistence. Her classmates had grown so accustomed to her isolated struggles that they barely noticed her presence as they discussed their plans for this evening and their expectations for the following day's training exercises. The Prometheus Cipher had served its intended purpose of identifying the most capable analytical minds within the program, while revealing the limitations of students who lacked the cognitive abilities or collaborative skills necessary for advanced intelligence work. Rodriguez's assessment would influence not only immediate academic standings but also long-term career trajectories within the military's intelligence apparatus. The institutional pressure of the training program created an environment where success was publicly celebrated while failure was quietly documented, maintaining morale among successful students while providing clear feedback about analytical limitations. This approach reflected the intelligence community's need for accurate assessment of capabilities in preparation for assignments where analytical failures could have national security implications. As closing time approached, the successful group had completed their documentation and begun discussing the theoretical implications of their solution methodology with Rodriguez. Their conversation demonstrated sophisticated understanding of cryptographic principles and collaborative analysis techniques that exceeded the instructor's expectations for students at their level of training. Thompson's confidence had reached new heights following the day's success, with his leadership role in solving the cipher reinforcing his self-perception as the program's most capable analyst. His systematic approach and mathematical insights had proven crucial to the group's breakthrough, validating his analytical methodology and strengthening his position among his peers. Martinez had gained recognition for her innovative psychological approaches to cryptographic analysis, with her insights about cipher creator psychology proving as valuable as traditional mathematical or linguistic techniques. Her interdisciplinary background had contributed unique perspectives that enhanced the group's overall analytical capabilities beyond what any individual member could have achieved. The classroom dynamics had crystallized around demonstrated analytical capabilities, with clear hierarchies emerging based on success in solving complex intelligence challenges. These social structures reflected the competitive nature of intelligence work and the emphasis on proven performance rather than academic credentials or military rank. Sarah's isolation had become so complete that her continued presence at her workstation seemed almost ghostly, with her classmates having largely forgotten about her struggles as they focused on their own achievements and future prospects. Her persistence appeared driven more by stubborn determination than realistic expectations of success, creating a poignant contrast with the celebration surrounding the successful solution. Rodriguez had observed this pattern numerous times throughout his teaching career, with certain students demonstrating analytical limitations that became apparent only when confronted with challenges of sufficient complexity. His professional experience had taught him to maintain objectivity in assessment, while providing appropriate support for struggling students within the constraints of military training requirements. The facility's closing time arrived with most students having accepted the day's outcomes and prepared to leave for their dormitories. The successful group gathered their materials with obvious satisfaction while discussing their plans for celebrating their achievement within the security constraints that governed their classified training program. Sarah finally looked up from her monitor as Rodriguez approached to inform her that the facility would be closing in 15 minutes. Her eyes appeared tired behind her thick glasses, and her uniform showed the wrinkles and coffee stains that accumulated during long hours of concentrated work. The instructor's expression remained professionally neutral as he prepared to offer the standard encouragement given to struggling students. The instructor had begun composing his mental assessment of Sarah's performance, noting her persistence and dedication while acknowledging her apparent analytical limitations. His military training emphasized honest evaluation of capabilities, but his experience as an educator made him sensitive to the personal impact of academic failure on dedicated students who had worked hard despite lacking necessary aptitudes. Thompson and his collaborative partners had begun discussing their expectations for the following day's exercises, their confidence boosted by their successful solution of what was widely regarded as the program's most challenging analytical test. Their excitement was infectious among other successful students, who looked forward to building upon the day's achievements in subsequent training exercises. The cleaning staff had begun their evening routines in other parts of the building, their presence creating subtle pressure for the remaining students to conclude their work and vacate the classroom. The institutional rhythms of military training created structured boundaries that governed every aspect of student life, including the duration of individual study sessions and the availability of facilities. Sarah saved her work files with the same methodical precision she had demonstrated throughout the day, her movements suggesting acceptance of her inability to solve the cipher rather than resignation or defeat. Her quiet demeanor had remained consistent despite hours of analytical struggle, creating an impression of inner strength that some observers might have confused with stubborn denial of limitations. Rodriguez waited patiently as Sarah organized her materials, his professional courtesy masking his internal assessment of her probable need for remedial training or possible program reassignment. The instructor had learned to deliver disappointing news with compassion while maintaining the objective standards that military intelligence work demanded from its practitioners. The successful students had gathered their belongings and were preparing to leave together, their natural bonds strengthened by their collaborative achievement and their shared status as the program's most promising analysts. Their conversations had shifted from technical discussion of cryptographic methods to social planning for their evening activities within the constraints of their classified training environment. The classroom had grown quiet except for the mechanical humming of computers and ventilation systems, creating an atmosphere of conclusion as the day's intense analytical work drew to a close. The fluorescent lighting that had seemed harsh during the afternoon struggles now appeared more gentle as shadows lengthened and the pressure of active problem-solving gave way to reflection on the day's events. Sarah stood up from her workstation and gathered her notebooks with deliberate care, her movements reflecting the same methodical approach she had applied to the cipher analysis. Her expression remained composed despite her obvious lack of success, suggesting either admirable resilience or concerning detachment from the reality of her analytical limitations. Rodriguez prepared to offer the standard encouragement that he provided to struggling students, emphasizing the learning value of challenging exercises while gently preparing them for the possibility that advanced intelligence work might not align with their natural aptitudes. His experience had taught him to balance honesty about capabilities with support for continued effort within appropriate limitations. The institutional culture of the intelligence training program created clear expectations about performance standards while providing structured support for students who demonstrated dedication despite analytical limitations. This approach reflected the military's need to maintain morale and develop all available talents, while ensuring that critical intelligence positions were filled by individuals with demonstrated capabilities. Sarah had begun walking toward the classroom exit when she suddenly stopped and turned back toward her workstation. Her movement was abrupt enough to catch Rodriguez's attention, and her expression had shifted from resigned acceptance to something that might have been sudden realization or recognition. Without explanation, Sarah returned to her computer and began typing with an intensity that contrasted sharply with her earlier hesitant approach. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with newfound confidence, and her eyes remained fixed on the monitor with laser-like focus that suggested a fundamental change in her understanding of the problem. Rodriguez paused in his preparation to leave, intrigued by the sudden transformation in Sarah's demeanor and approach. The instructor had witnessed similar moments of breakthrough in exceptional students, but such occurrences were rare and typically happened much earlier in problem-solving sessions rather than after hours of apparent failure. The successful students had noticed Sarah's renewed activity and paused their departure, preparations to observe what appeared to be a dramatic shift in her analytical approach. Thompson, in particular, watched with professional curiosity as the student who had struggled throughout the day began working with focused intensity that rivaled his own problem-solving efforts. Sarah's typing had become rapid and purposeful, with her earlier hesitation completely replaced by confident input of what appeared to be systematic solution attempts. Her posture had straightened, and the nervous habit of adjusting her glasses had disappeared as she focused completely on the cipher with an intensity that seemed to transform her entire presence. The change in Sarah's approach was so dramatic that Rodriguez found himself moving closer to observe her work, his professional curiosity overriding his intention to conclude the day's session. The instructor had learned to recognize genuine analytical breakthroughs, and Sarah's sudden transformation exhibited characteristics that suggested more than desperate last-minute attempts to avoid failure. Martinez had been discussing dinner plans with Thompson when Sarah's renewed activity caught her attention, and her psychological training made her particularly sensitive to the dramatic behavioral changes that often accompanied significant cognitive breakthroughs. The student who had appeared defeated just minutes earlier now exhibited confidence and focus that suggested fundamental shifts in understanding rather than mere persistence. Sarah's monitor began displaying results that caught Rodriguez's immediate attention, with coherent text fragments appearing from character strings that had remained meaningless throughout the day. The instructor moved directly behind her workstation to observe her methodology, his professional interest intensified by the apparent speed and accuracy of her solution process. The successful group had abandoned their departure preparations to cluster around Sarah's workstation, their competitive instincts activated by the possibility that the student they had dismissed might be achieving results that had taken them hours of collaborative effort to accomplish. Thompson's expression revealed a mixture of professional curiosity and personal concern about the implications of Sarah's sudden breakthrough. Rodriguez's assessment of the situation shifted rapidly as Sarah's screen continued displaying decoded sections of the Prometheus Cipher with accuracy that matched or exceeded the successful group's earlier results. The instructor's experience with advanced cryptographic analysis allowed him to recognize sophisticated techniques that suggested capabilities far beyond what Sarah had previously demonstrated. Sarah's approach to the cipher had become systematic and elegant, with her solution methodology revealing understanding of complex cryptographic principles that impressed even Rodriguez. Her earlier struggles seemed completely inconsistent with the analytical sophistication she now displayed, creating cognitive dissonance among observers who had spent the day witnessing her apparent limitations. The psychological transformation in Sarah's demeanor was as remarkable as her analytical breakthrough, with her previous timid uncertainty replaced by quiet confidence that seemed to emanate from deep wells of knowledge and experience. Her movements had become economical and precise, and her focus remained unshakable despite the growing attention from her classmates and instructor. Thompson watched Sarah's progress with growing amazement and concern, recognizing that her individual achievements were surpassing his group's collaborative efforts in both speed and elegance of solution. His competitive instincts warred with professional admiration as he observed analytical techniques that challenged his self-perception as the program's most capable student. Martinez's psychological training helped her recognize the authenticity of Sarah's transformation, distinguishing between desperate attempts to avoid failure and genuine cognitive breakthroughs that revealed previously hidden capabilities. The behavioral changes she observed suggested that Sarah had been operating under constraints or limitations that had suddenly been removed or overcome. Rodriguez found himself reassessing every assumption he had made about Sarah's analytical capabilities as her solution methodology continued demonstrating sophistication that exceeded his expectations for any individual student. The instructor's professional experience had taught him to recognize exceptional analytical minds, but Sarah's sudden revelation of such capabilities, after hours of apparent struggle, defied his understanding of cognitive assessment. The Prometheus Cipher had been designed to challenge the military's most promising intelligence analysts, but Sarah was decoding its multiple layers with individual efficiency that surpassed collaborative efforts by the program's top students. Her approach revealed insights into the cipher's structure that suggested analytical thinking beyond what the NSA designers had anticipated from military trainees. Sarah's continued focus remained absolute despite the growing crowd of observers surrounding her workstation, her concentration unbroken by external distractions as she worked through complex analytical processes with mechanical precision. Her earlier persona of struggling student had been completely replaced by someone who exhibited mastery of advanced cryptographic principles and systematic problem-solving methodologies. The classroom atmosphere had shifted from conclusion of the day's exercise to intense focus on Sarah's unexpected breakthrough, with students and instructor alike recognizing that they were witnessing something extraordinary that challenged their understanding of analytical capabilities and assessment methodologies. The social dynamics that had crystallized around demonstrated competence were suddenly disrupted by Sarah's dramatic revelation of hidden abilities. Rodriguez's professional assessment protocols had been designed around consistent demonstration of capabilities over time, but Sarah's sudden transformation suggested that traditional evaluation methodologies might be inadequate for recognizing certain types of exceptional analytical minds. The instructor found himself questioning not only his assessment of Sarah, but his understanding of how extraordinary capabilities might manifest under pressure. Thompson's leadership position among his peers faced unexpected challenge as Sarah's individual achievements demonstrated analytical capabilities that exceeded his collaborative group's collective efforts. His competitive instincts struggled with professional recognition that he might be witnessing intellectual abilities beyond his own despite his previous dominance in every academic measure. Martinez's psychological insights helped her appreciate the complexity of Sarah's situation, recognizing that the dramatic behavioral changes suggested previous operation under constraints rather than sudden development of new capabilities. Her training in human behavioral analysis provided frameworks for understanding how exceptional individuals might conceal their abilities for personal or professional reasons. The institutional implications of Sarah's breakthrough extended beyond individual academic assessment to questions about identification and development of exceptional analytical talents within military intelligence programs. Her ability to solve the Prometheus Cipher individually after appearing to struggle with basic elements suggested systematic problems with traditional evaluation methodologies. Sarah's solution continued progressing through the cipher's most complex sections with consistency that demonstrated not just analytical capability, but deep understanding of cryptographic principles that typically required years of specialized training to develop. Her work revealed insights into mathematical relationships and linguistic patterns that impressed even Rodriguez's extensive professional experience. The successful group's earlier celebration had been completely overshadowed by Sarah's individual achievement, with their collaborative breakthrough appearing almost mundane compared to her systematic deconstruction of the cipher's multiple encoding layers. The social hierarchies that had emerged based on demonstrated analytical capabilities were suddenly called into question by Sarah's revelation of extraordinary abilities. Rodriguez recognized that he was witnessing analytical capabilities that exceeded not only his students' previous performance, but his own expertise in advanced cryptographic analysis. Sarah's solution methodology revealed understanding of theoretical principles and practical applications that suggested professional experience beyond what military training programs typically provided. The timing of Sarah's breakthrough occurring only after her classmates had achieved success through collaborative effort raised questions about her motivations and the constraints under which she had been operating throughout the training program. Her dramatic transformation suggested either remarkable personal resilience or systematic concealment of exceptional capabilities for reasons that remained unclear. Sarah finally completed her analysis of the Prometheus Cipher, her screen displaying the complete decoded message with accuracy and elegance that surpassed every previous solution attempt. Her systematic approach had revealed not only the cipher's content, but insights into its construction methodology that demonstrated analytical thinking beyond what the program's designers had anticipated from military trainees. The decoded message itself proved anticlimactic compared to the analytical tour de force that Sarah had demonstrated in solving it. But the institutional implications of her individual breakthrough would reverberate through the intelligence training program for years to come. Rodriguez realized that he had witnessed something extraordinary that challenged fundamental assumptions about analytical assessment and talent identification within military intelligence operations. The silence in the classroom stretched for several heartbeats as the full magnitude of what had just occurred settled into the minds of everyone present. Sarah's monitor displayed the complete solution to the Prometheus Cipher, but more than that, it showed analytical annotations and insights that revealed a depth of understanding that Rodriguez had never seen from any student in his 15 years of teaching. The methodology she had employed wasn't just correct. It was elegant, efficient, and demonstrated mastery of principles that weren't even covered in the advanced curriculum. Rodriguez stepped closer to Sarah's workstation, his eyes scanning the detailed breakdown she had created of the cipher's structure. What he saw challenged everything he thought he knew about cryptographic analysis and the capabilities of the students in his program. Sarah had not only decoded the message, but had reverse-engineered the entire creation process, identifying design flaws and potential vulnerabilities that the NSA's most experienced cryptographers might have missed. Thompson found his voice first, though it came out somewhat strangled. "How did you? I mean, we spent hours working collaboratively on this, and you just..." He trailed off, unable to formulate a question that could adequately address what they had all witnessed. His carefully constructed self-image as the program's most promising analyst had been shattered in the space of 20 minutes by someone he had mentally categorized as academically hopeless. Sarah turned in her chair to face the assembled group, her expression calm, but fundamentally different from the uncertain, almost apologetic demeanor she had maintained throughout the day. Behind her thick glasses, her eyes held a clarity and confidence that seemed to belong to an entirely different person. When she spoke, her voice carried quiet authority that commanded immediate attention from everyone in the room. The cipher incorporates 17 different encoding methodologies arranged in what appears to be random sequence, but actually follows a mathematical progression based on prime number theory. She began, her explanation delivered with the precision of someone accustomed to briefing senior intelligence officials. The NSA designers embedded 3 separate misdirection protocols designed to waste analytical time, but they made a fundamental error in their psychological assumptions about how military analysts would approach the problem. Rodriguez felt his professional world tilting as Sarah continued her analysis, demonstrating understanding of advanced cryptographic theory that exceeded his own expertise despite his decades of experience in intelligence operations. Her explanation revealed not just knowledge of how the cipher worked, but insights into the minds of its creators and the institutional biases that had shaped their design decisions. Martinez's psychological training helped her recognize the Significance of Sarah's transformation beyond the mere analytical achievement. The behavioral changes she observed suggested not just hidden intellectual capabilities, but professional experience and training that couldn't be acquired through academic study alone. The woman sitting before them exhibited the confident competence of someone accustomed to handling classified intelligence operations at the highest levels. "You've been holding back," Rodriguez said, his statement carrying the weight of sudden understanding. "This entire time, you've been deliberately concealing your capabilities. The question is why?" His instructor's authority reasserted itself as he processed the implications of having an unknown quantity within his classified training program, someone whose true background and motivations remained completely mysterious. Sarah's smile held no warmth, and for the first time since Rodriguez had known her, she appeared genuinely formidable rather than academically struggling. Because, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, sometimes it's useful to understand how an organization functions when it believes you're not a threat. Your program has some interesting characteristics that aren't apparent to students who excel from the beginning. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees as the implications of Sarah's words sank in. Rodriguez's mind raced through security protocols and clearance procedures, wondering how someone with Sarah's apparent capabilities and hidden agenda had gained access to the military's most sensitive intelligence training program. His hand moved unconsciously toward the secure phone on his desk, military instincts activating in response to a perceived security threat. Thompson's competitive instincts had been completely overwhelmed by growing unease about Sarah's true identity and purposes. "Who are you really?" he asked, his voice carrying the tension that had suddenly filled the classroom. "Because nobody just happens to possess the analytical capabilities you've demonstrated. That level of expertise takes years of specialized training and practical experience." Sarah stood up from her workstation with fluid grace that contrasted sharply with the awkward movements she had displayed throughout the day. Her posture had straightened, and the uncertain graduate student had been completely replaced by someone who radiated professional competence and quiet authority. When she reached into her pocket, Rodriguez tensed, his military training preparing him for potential threats from unknown operatives. Instead of a weapon, Sarah withdrew a leather credential case that she opened and placed on Rodriguez's desk with deliberate precision. The instructor's eyes widened as he recognized the official seals and classifications that marked the document as authentic federal identification. The name matched Sarah Chen, but the agency affiliation and clearance level indicated access to intelligence programs that existed far above the military training facility's security classification. "Defense Intelligence Agency, Special Activities Division," Sarah said simply, her voice carrying the matter-of-fact tone of someone accustomed to revealing classified information to authorized personnel. "I'm here conducting a comprehensive assessment of military intelligence training methodologies and institutional biases that might affect identification and development of exceptional analytical talents." Rodriguez felt his legs weaken slightly as the full implications crashed over him. Sarah wasn't a struggling student. She was a federal agent conducting covert evaluation of his program, his teaching methods, and undoubtedly his professional competence as an intelligence instructor. Every interaction they had shared, every assessment he had made, every assumption about her capabilities had been part of an elaborate operation designed to test the military's analytical training systems. The successful group that had spent the day celebrating their collaborative breakthrough now faced the sobering realization that their achievement had been overshadowed by an individual whose capabilities exceeded their collective efforts. More troubling was the recognition that their celebration had occurred in the presence of a federal agent who had been evaluating their behavior, their analytical methods, and their responses to academic pressure. Martinez's psychological training helped her process the revelation more quickly than her classmates, allowing her to recognize the sophisticated behavioral performance that Sarah had maintained throughout their time together. "You've been analyzing us," she said, her voice carrying a mixture of professional admiration and personal unease. "Everything we've done, every interaction we've had, has been part of your assessment." Sarah nodded, her expression remaining professionally neutral as she confirmed Martinez's conclusion. "The DIA has concerns about whether current military intelligence training programs adequately identify and develop exceptional analytical capabilities, particularly among individuals who don't fit traditional profiles of intellectual excellence. My assignment was to evaluate institutional biases and training methodologies from the perspective of a student who appeared to struggle with basic analytical concepts." The classroom had become completely silent except for the mechanical humming of electronic equipment, the weight of Sarah's revelation settling over the assembled students and instructor like a heavy blanket. Rodriguez realized that every decision he had made regarding Sarah's academic progress, every assessment of her capabilities, every moment of professional judgment would be included in a federal report that could affect his career and the future of the entire training program. Thompson's mind reeled as he processed the implications of Sarah's covert assessment, wondering what conclusions she had drawn about his leadership, his analytical methods, and his interactions with struggling classmates. His competitive confidence had been completely shattered by the recognition that the person he had dismissed as academically hopeless possessed capabilities that exceeded his own, despite his prestigious background and consistent academic excellence. The institutional dynamics of the training program took on entirely new meaning as Rodriguez grappled with the reality that his classroom had become a laboratory for federal assessment of military intelligence capabilities. Every teaching decision, every student interaction, every moment of professional judgment had been observed and evaluated by someone whose analytical expertise far exceeded his own. The weight of that scrutiny felt crushing as he considered the implications for his career and the program he had dedicated years to developing. Sarah's transformation from struggling student to federal agent conducting covert assessment represented a masterclass in operational deception that left Rodriguez questioning his ability to read people and situations accurately. Her performance had been so convincing that she had fooled not just him, but every student in the program, creating a comprehensive illusion that had allowed her to observe authentic institutional behaviors without the artificial modifications that typically occurred when personnel knew they were being evaluated. The other students remained frozen in various states of shock and confusion as they processed the revelation that their academic peer had actually been conducting professional assessment of their capabilities and behaviors. Thompson's usual confidence had evaporated completely as he contemplated what Sarah's report might say about his leadership style, his treatment of struggling classmates, and his responses to academic competition and pressure. Martinez found herself analyzing Sarah's behavioral performance with professional fascination, recognizing the sophisticated psychological techniques that had been employed to maintain the illusion of academic struggle while conducting detailed assessment of training methodologies. The consistency of Sarah's assumed personality, traits throughout weeks of interaction, demonstrated operational discipline that impressed even Martinez's specialized background in behavioral analysis. Rodriguez's immediate concern centered on the security implications of having an unknown federal agent embedded within his classified training program without his knowledge or consent. The breach of established protocols troubled him almost as much as the personal implications of being evaluated without his awareness, creating professional anxieties about both his teaching effectiveness and his security consciousness as an intelligence instructor. Sarah seemed to recognize the distress her revelation had caused among the assembled group, her expression softening slightly from professional neutrality to something approaching empathy. "I understand this is disorienting," she said, her voice carrying the measured tones of someone accustomed to delivering sensitive briefings to security-cleared personnel. But I want to assure you that my assessment focuses on institutional systems rather than individual performance evaluations. The qualification provided little comfort to Rodriguez, who understood that institutional assessments inevitably included detailed analysis of the personnel responsible for implementing those systems, his teaching methods, his student assessment protocols, his classroom management techniques, and his overall effectiveness as an intelligence instructor would all be scrutinized in Sarah's final report to DIA headquarters. Thompson struggled to process the complete reversal of his understanding about classroom dynamics and academic hierarchies. The woman he had mentally categorized as the program's weakest student had revealed herself as someone whose professional capabilities exceeded everyone present, including their instructor. His competitive instincts warred with growing recognition that traditional measures of academic excellence might be inadequate for identifying truly exceptional analytical minds. The Prometheus Cipher, which had seemed like the ultimate test of cryptographic analytical capabilities, now appeared almost trivial compared to the sophisticated deception operation that Sarah had conducted throughout her time in the program. Her ability to maintain consistent behavioral patterns while concealing extraordinary professional capabilities demonstrated operational skills that exceeded anything covered in their training curriculum. Martinez's psychological training helped her appreciate the complexity of Sarah's assignment, recognizing that successful covert assessment required not just analytical capabilities, but sophisticated understanding of human psychology and group dynamics. The behavioral consistency that Sarah had maintained while appearing to struggle academically represented professional-level operational tradecraft that typically required years of specialized training to develop. Rodriguez found himself reviewing every interaction he had shared with Sarah, searching for signs that he should have recognized her true capabilities and professional background. The analytical sophistication she had demonstrated in solving the Prometheus Cipher seemed completely inconsistent with her previous academic performance, creating cognitive dissonance that challenged his understanding of how exceptional capabilities manifested under pressure. The security protocols governing the training program had been designed to prevent exactly the kind of unauthorized access that Sarah had apparently achieved, creating institutional concerns that extended far beyond the immediate classroom situation. Rodriguez realized that his superiors would demand detailed explanations about how a federal agent had gained access to classified training without proper notification and coordination. Sarah's credentials had been impressive enough to gain her admission to one of the military's most selective intelligence programs, but Rodriguez now wondered what additional documentation and background verification had been required to support her cover identity. The operational sophistication required to create and maintain such comprehensive deception suggested resources and capabilities that exceeded typical institutional assessment programs. The other students had begun exchanging glances that conveyed their shared confusion and concern about the implications of Sarah's revelation. Their academic achievements throughout the program now seemed somehow diminished by the recognition that their most significant observer had been someone whose capabilities exceeded their collective abilities, despite her apparent struggles with basic analytical concepts. Thompson's leadership position among his peers had been fundamentally undermined by Sarah's demonstration that traditional measures of academic excellence might be inadequate for identifying truly exceptional analytical capabilities. His systematic approach to problem-solving and mathematical expertise had been surpassed by someone who had appeared academically hopeless just hours earlier. The collaborative methodology that Thompson's group had employed to solve the Prometheus Cipher now seemed pedestrian compared to Sarah's individual analytical breakthrough, raising questions about whether military intelligence training adequately prepared students for the kind of independent thinking required in actual operational environments. Rodriguez struggled to maintain his instructional authority in the face of Sarah's revelation. recognizing that his professional expertise had been thoroughly assessed by someone whose capabilities exceeded his own. The power dynamics of the classroom had been completely reversed, with the apparent student revealing herself as the most professionally qualified person present. Sarah's analytical breakdown of the Prometheus Cipher had revealed insights into cryptographic methodology that exceeded the curriculum's intended learning objectives, demonstrating knowledge that typically required years of specialized experience in operational intelligence environments. Her solution hadn't just been correct. It had been elegant and efficient in ways that suggested deep understanding of theoretical principles and practical applications. The institutional biases that Sarah had mentioned in her revelation took on troubling significance as Rodriguez considered how the program's assessment methodologies might systematically overlook exceptional capabilities that didn't conform to traditional expectations. Her apparent academic struggles had created blind spots that prevented recognition of extraordinary analytical abilities until she chose to reveal them. Martinez found herself wondering how many other students might possess hidden capabilities that weren't adequately identified or developed through standard training protocols. Sarah's covert assessment suggested institutional concerns about talent identification that extended beyond individual performance to fundamental questions about how the military developed its intelligence capabilities. The timing of Sarah's breakthrough, occurring only after the successful group had achieved their collaborative solution, raised questions about whether her analytical capabilities had been constrained by operational requirements rather than actual limitations. Her ability to solve the cipher individually suggested that she could have completed the challenge much earlier if her assignment had permitted such demonstration. Rodriguez realized that his assessment of student capabilities throughout the program might have been fundamentally flawed, influenced by unconscious biases about how exceptional analytical minds should present themselves in academic environments. Sarah's performance suggested that traditional evaluation methodologies might be inadequate for identifying individuals whose capabilities exceeded conventional expectations. The competitive dynamics that had emerged among students throughout the program now appeared somewhat artificial, given that the most capable analyst had been deliberately concealing her abilities while conducting covert assessment of institutional systems. Thompson's dominance in academic rankings had been meaningless when measured against Sarah's hidden professional capabilities. Sarah's revelation cast new light on every classroom interaction and student assessment that had occurred during her time in the program, creating retroactive concerns about the accuracy of professional judgments and institutional evaluations. Rodriguez wondered what other aspects of the training program might require reassessment in light of her observations and analysis. The security clearance requirements for the training program had apparently been insufficient to prevent unauthorized access by federal agents conducting covert assessment, raising institutional concerns about information security and program integrity. Rodriguez recognized that his superiors would demand comprehensive review of admission procedures and background verification protocols. Thompson's confidence in his analytical abilities had been fundamentally shaken by Sarah's demonstration that exceptional capabilities might manifest in ways that defied traditional expectations and assessment methodologies. His systematic approach to problem-solving had been surpassed by someone who had appeared incapable of basic analytical thinking just hours earlier. The collaborative problem-solving techniques that the program emphasized as preparation for operational intelligence work now seemed potentially inadequate compared to the individual analytical capabilities that Sarah had demonstrated. Her solution of the Prometheus Cipher suggested that exceptional minds might achieve results that exceeded collective efforts by competent analysts working together. Rodriguez found himself questioning not just his assessment of Sarah, but his understanding of how analytical excellence manifested in operational environments where traditional academic measures might be irrelevant or counterproductive. Her covert assessment assignment suggested that real intelligence work required capabilities that weren't adequately developed or evaluated through standard training protocols. The psychological sophistication required to maintain Sarah's cover identity while conducting detailed institutional assessment represented operational skills that exceeded anything covered in the training curriculum, creating questions about whether the program adequately prepared students for the complexity of actual intelligence operations. Martinez's behavioral analysis training helped her recognize that Sarah's transformation hadn't been sudden development of new capabilities, but rather removal of operational constraints that had required concealment of existing expertise. The behavioral changes she observed suggested professional competence that had been deliberately hidden rather than recently acquired. The institutional implications of Sarah's covert assessment extended beyond individual program evaluation to broader questions about how the military identified and developed exceptional analytical talents within its intelligence apparatus. Her ability to conceal extraordinary capabilities while appearing academically hopeless suggested systematic problems with talent recognition and development protocols. Rodriguez's teaching methodology had been designed around identifying and nurturing analytical potential, but Sarah's revelation suggested that his assessment techniques might be inadequate for recognizing exceptional capabilities that didn't conform to traditional expectations. The cognitive dissonance created by her transformation challenged fundamental assumptions about how extraordinary minds operated under pressure. The Prometheus Cipher had been intended as the ultimate test of student analytical capabilities, but Sarah's individual solution suggested that the challenge might be inadequate for assessing truly exceptional minds whose abilities exceeded the program's designed parameters. Her methodology had revealed insights that surpassed the intended learning objectives and challenged the assessment's fundamental assumptions. Thompson's academic achievements throughout the program now seemed diminished by comparison to Sarah's hidden capabilities, creating personal and professional concerns about his readiness for advanced intelligence assignments. His competitive instincts struggled with recognition that traditional measures of excellence might be inadequate for identifying operational potential. The collaborative approach that the program emphasized as essential for intelligence operations had been surpassed by Sarah's individual analytical breakthrough, raising questions about whether team-based methodologies adequately prepared students for situations requiring independent analytical thinking and operational decision-making. Rodriguez realized that his professional reputation and career prospects might be significantly affected by Sarah's assessment report, creating personal anxieties about institutional evaluation processes that operated without his knowledge or consent. The covert nature of her assignment suggested accountability systems that exceeded his understanding and control. Sarah's analytical sophistication in solving the Prometheus Cipher had demonstrated knowledge and capabilities that exceeded the program's curriculum and intended outcomes, suggesting that exceptional minds might require different development approaches than those employed for typical intelligence analysts. Her solution methodology had revealed theoretical understanding and practical applications that typically required years of operational experience. The security implications of Sarah's unauthorized access to classified training programs created institutional concerns that extended beyond immediate classroom situations to broader questions about information protection and program integrity. Rodriguez recognized that comprehensive security reviews would be required to address the vulnerabilities that had enabled her covert assessment operation. Martinez found herself reassessing every interaction she had observed between Sarah and other students, recognizing that apparent academic struggles had actually been sophisticated behavioral performance designed to maintain operational cover while conducting detailed psychological assessment of training methodologies and institutional dynamics. The competitive hierarchies that had emerged among students throughout the program now appeared artificially constructed, given that the most capable analyst had been deliberately concealing her abilities. while others competed for academic recognition and instructor approval. Thompson's leadership position had been meaningless when measured against Sarah's hidden professional expertise. Rodriguez's confidence in his ability to assess student capabilities and potential had been fundamentally undermined by Sarah's revelation, creating professional concerns about his effectiveness as an intelligence instructor and his readiness to evaluate analytical minds for operational assignments. Her transformation challenged everything he thought he understood about recognizing exceptional capabilities. The timing and methodology of Sarah's analytical breakthrough suggested that her previous struggles had been entirely artificial, created to maintain operational cover while conducting comprehensive assessment of institutional biases and training effectiveness. Her solution of the Prometheus Cipher represented removal of constraints rather than sudden development of new capabilities. Thompson struggled to process the implications of Sarah's covert assessment for his own professional development and career prospects, wondering what conclusions she had drawn about his analytical methods, leadership style, and responses to academic competition and pressure. His competitive achievements now seemed potentially counterproductive if they had revealed problematic attitudes or behaviors. The institutional culture of the training program had been comprehensively assessed by someone whose professional expertise exceeded that of instructors and students alike, creating concerns about how organizational dynamics might be modified in response to Sarah's observations and recommendations. Rodriguez realized that fundamental changes might be required based on her analysis. Sarah's ability to maintain consistent behavioral patterns while concealing extraordinary professional capabilities demonstrated operational discipline and psychological sophistication that exceeded anything covered in the training curriculum, suggesting gaps between academic preparation and operational requirements that might affect student readiness for intelligence assignments. The collaborative problem-solving emphasis that characterized the program's approach to analytical training had been challenged by Sarah's individual solution of the Prometheus Cipher, raising questions about whether team-based methodologies adequately prepared students for operational environments requiring independent thinking and decision-making capabilities. Rodriguez found himself reviewing the entire structure and methodology of the training program in light of Sarah's revelation, wondering what aspects of institutional design and implementation might require modification based on her professional assessment and recommendations. Her covert evaluation suggested systematic concerns that extended beyond individual performance to fundamental questions about program effectiveness. The psychological complexity of maintaining cover identity while conducting detailed institutional assessment represented skills that exceeded typical intelligence training, creating questions about whether the program adequately prepared students for the sophistication required in actual operational environments where deception and analysis often occurred simultaneously. Martinez's recognition of Sarah's behavioral performance sophistication helped her appreciate the professional capabilities required for successful covert assessment operations, understanding that such assignments demanded psychological expertise and operational discipline that exceeded conventional analytical training and development programs. Thompson's academic dominance throughout the program had been rendered meaningless by Sarah's demonstration that exceptional analytical capabilities might not conform to traditional expectations or assessment methodologies, creating personal and professional concerns about his readiness for operational assignments requiring truly extraordinary thinking. The security protocols governing access to classified training programs had apparently been insufficient to prevent unauthorized penetration by federal agents conducting covert assessment, raising institutional concerns about information protection and program integrity that might require comprehensive review and modification of admission and verification procedures. Rodriguez's teaching authority had been fundamentally challenged by the recognition that his most struggling student had actually been the most professionally qualified person in the classroom, creating cognitive dissonance about assessment methodologies and instructional effectiveness that might affect his confidence and career prospects. Sarah's analytical breakthrough had occurred with timing and methodology that suggested deliberate revelation rather than sudden capability development, indicating that her apparent struggles had been entirely artificial constructs designed to maintain operational cover while conducting comprehensive institutional assessment and evaluation. The competitive dynamics that had characterized student interactions throughout the program now appeared potentially counterproductive if they had prevented recognition and development of exceptional capabilities that didn't conform to traditional academic expectations and institutional biases about how analytical excellence should manifest. Martinez found herself wondering about the broader implications of Sarah's covert assessment for military intelligence development programs, recognizing that institutional concerns about talent identification and training effectiveness might require fundamental modifications to assessment methodologies and development protocols. Thompson's confidence in his analytical abilities and leadership potential had been thoroughly undermined by Sarah's demonstration that exceptional capabilities might be effectively concealed while appearing academically hopeless. Challenging his understanding of how extraordinary minds operated and revealed themselves under pressure and competition. The institutional biases that Sarah had mentioned as part of her assessment focus took on troubling significance as Rodriguez considered how unconscious assumptions about analytical excellence might systematically prevent recognition and development of exceptional capabilities that didn't conform to traditional expectations and stereotypical presentations. Rodriguez realized that comprehensive review of his teaching methodology and assessment protocols would be required in response to Sarah's covert evaluation, creating professional anxieties about institutional changes that might affect his career trajectory and effectiveness as an intelligence instructor and talent development specialist. Sarah's revelation had transformed the classroom dynamic completely, with traditional authority structures and academic hierarchies rendered meaningless by the recognition that apparent student-instructor relationships had actually been federal agent conducting professional assessment of institutional effectiveness and personnel competence through sophisticated operational deception. The sophistication of Sarah's cover identity and behavioral performance suggested operational capabilities that exceeded conventional intelligence training, raising questions about whether standard development programs adequately prepared analysts for the complexity and psychological demands of actual operational environments requiring sustained deception and assessment. Thompson found himself questioning every aspect of his academic performance and competitive behavior throughout the program, wondering what conclusions Sarah's professional assessment had drawn about his analytical methods, leadership style, and responses to pressure that might affect his career prospects and assignment opportunities. The collaborative problem-solving methodology that had characterized the successful group's approach to the Prometheus Cipher now seemed potentially inadequate compared to Sarah's individual analytical capabilities, suggesting that team-based training might not adequately prepare students for operational situations requiring independent exceptional thinking. Rodriguez's professional reputation and institutional standing had been placed under federal scrutiny without his knowledge or consent, creating personal concerns about evaluation processes that operated beyond his understanding and control while assessing his teaching effectiveness and program management capabilities through covert operational assessment. Martinez's psychological training helped her recognize the extraordinary discipline required to maintain consistent behavioral performance while conducting detailed institutional analysis, understanding that Sarah's assignment demanded capabilities that exceeded conventional analytical training and suggested gaps in standard program preparation for operational complexity. The security implications of unauthorized federal access to classified training programs extended beyond immediate classroom concerns to broader questions about institutional vulnerability and information protection, that might require comprehensive review of admission procedures, background verification protocols, and program integrity safeguards. Sarah's analytical solution of the Prometheus Cipher had demonstrated knowledge and methodology that exceeded the program's curriculum and intended outcomes, suggesting that exceptional analytical minds might require different development approaches than those designed for typical intelligence personnel and conventional training methodologies. Thompson's academic achievements and competitive success throughout the program had been rendered meaningless by comparison to Sarah's concealed professional capabilities, creating cognitive dissonance about the relationship between traditional academic excellence and operational analytical potential that might affect his confidence and career trajectory. The timing of Sarah's revelation, occurring after the successful collaborative solution, but before program conclusion, suggested deliberate operational planning that maximized assessment effectiveness while minimizing disruption to institutional processes in student development, demonstrating sophisticated understanding of organizational psychology and training dynamics. Rodriguez stepped back from Sarah's workstation, his mind reeling as he processed the complete transformation of everything he thought he understood about his classroom. The woman who had appeared to struggle with basic analytical concepts had just revealed herself as a federal agent whose capabilities exceeded everyone present. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for his secure phone, military protocol demanding immediate notification of his superiors. Sarah noticed Rodriguez's movement and raised her hand in a gesture that was both respectful and authoritative. "Staff Sergeant, before you make that call, perhaps we should discuss what happened here today. My assessment period is complete, but the learning opportunity for everyone in this room is just beginning." Thompson found his voice first, though it carried none of his usual confidence. "Learning opportunity? You've just demolished everything we thought we knew about analytical assessment. What exactly are we supposed to learn from being completely fooled?" Sarah's expression shifted to something that might have been sympathy mixed with professional respect. "You're supposed to learn that real intelligence work has very little to do with academic performance. Lieutenant Thompson, your systematic approach is valuable, but it's not the only form that exceptional capability takes. Today you've learned that assumptions can be dangerous, and that the quiet person in the corner might possess capabilities that exceed your collective abilities." Martinez stepped forward, her psychological training helping her process the situation analytically. "What did your assessment reveal about our training program that concerned the Defense Intelligence Agency enough to justify this level of covert evaluation?" Sarah's expression became more serious as she weighed security considerations against educational value. Without revealing classified details, there are concerns about whether military intelligence training adequately identifies exceptional analytical capabilities, particularly among individuals who don't fit traditional profiles of academic excellence. Rodriguez felt the implications settling over him like a heavy weight. "You're saying our assessment methodologies are fundamentally flawed, that we're missing exceptional talent because we're looking for the wrong indicators?" Sarah nodded. "Slowly, among other things, yes. But the problems go deeper. The institutional culture here creates pressures that can actually inhibit exceptional performance among individuals who think differently than the methodologies you're teaching." Thompson's competitive instincts reasserted themselves, though tempered by newfound humility. "But if exceptional analysts think differently, how are we supposed to identify and develop them?" The question revealed genuine intellectual curiosity, and Sarah's expression brightened slightly. "That's exactly the right question. Traditional indicators like speed of comprehension and systematic methodology might actually be counterproductive for identifying minds that operate on different cognitive levels." Rodriguez leaned forward despite his professional concerns. "Different cognitive levels? Are you suggesting that exceptional analytical capabilities manifest in ways that appear problematic in conventional training environments?" Sarah chose. her words with precision. Consider this. The most innovative solutions to complex intelligence problems often come from individuals who see patterns that escape systematic analysis. These minds might appear to struggle with basic methodologies, precisely because they're operating on levels of complexity that make conventional approaches seem inefficient. The revelation struck Thomson with particular force as he reconsidered his entire approach to analytical thinking. "You're saying that my systematic methodology might actually be limiting my analytical potential." Sarah's expression softened with encouragement. "Your capabilities are genuine and valuable, Lieutenant Thomson. But today you've learned that analytical excellence comes in many forms, and true leadership requires recognition of diverse cognitive approaches rather than dominance through individual capability." Martinez found herself nodding as insights from her background training aligned with Sarah's explanations. This connects to research about cognitive diversity in analytical teams. Effective intelligence operations require different types of thinking working together. Rodriguez's security concerns warred with recognition that Sarah's assessment might provide valuable insights. What would different assessment approaches look like? How do we identify capabilities that don't conform to traditional expectations? Sarah's approval was evident in her more relaxed posture. That's classified information that will be addressed through appropriate channels, but recognition of exceptional analytical capabilities requires fundamental shifts in how we understand intelligence and human cognitive potential. Thomson found himself reassessing every assumption about analytical excellence. So we're not being prepared for what we'll actually encounter in operational environments. Sarah's response carried the weight of professional experience. Operational intelligence work requires capabilities that can't be developed through academic exercises alone. Real analytical challenges involve human psychology, cultural complexity, and strategic thinking that exceed any training program's scope. The classroom grew quiet as everyone absorbed the implications. Rodriguez realized comprehensive program review might be required, creating both anxiety and excitement about potential improvements. Martinez recognized the educational value. Despite its disorienting nature, your demonstration has challenged every assumption we've made about analytical capabilities. Even if professionally humbling, it's provided insights that traditional training couldn't deliver. Sarah's expression revealed genuine respect. That recognition demonstrates exactly the intellectual flexibility that operational intelligence work requires. The ability to reassess fundamental assumptions when confronted with contradictory evidence is more valuable than any specific analytical technique. Rodriguez wondered what other aspects of his methodology might require examination. Will there be follow-up evaluation or recommendations for institutional modifications? Sarah's response indicated significant changes might be forthcoming. Appropriate authorities will be briefed through established channels, and any necessary modifications will be implemented according to institutional protocols. Thomson's competitive drive had been permanently altered, replaced by genuine curiosity. Today has taught me that real excellence in intelligence work might require humility and recognition of limitations rather than confidence in individual capabilities. As Sarah gathered her materials with efficient movements, Rodriguez understood they had witnessed something extraordinary that would influence their understanding of intelligence work for years to come. True analytical excellence, they had learned, often whispered while mediocrity shouted, and the most dangerous assumptions were those that prevented recognition of exceptional capabilities hidden in plain sight. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.